My sister Casey loved the piano. She used to play it nearly every day, practicing for multiple years before she eventually mastered it. She was great at it. Amazing even. She even got a deal to become a full-time composer at a film studio to compose music for them when she submitted an application to them, which broke my family's hearts even more when she passed away 2 months ago in a calamitous car crash. I've been distraught about it every day, as with my mom and dad. It really messed me up for a while. It got in the way of my job and in my daily activities. She was what it meant to have a sibling. I have been getting better in more recent times, being able to move past it and live my life more thoroughly. But even then, each day never passes by without me missing her dearly. We grew up together and always looked out for each other. I recently moved into a new house, using the allowance I've been saving up throughout my teenage years, along with the loans from the bank and the lousy pay from my minimum wage job. It felt great to have my own house all to myself. I didn't have any furniture yet, so I was borrowing some cheap chairs and couches from my parents' attic in the meantime. I also packed almost all my belongings at my parents' house, whether it be my computer, bed, books, etc. One of the items I had to bring with me though was Casey's old piano. My parents said that it had been sitting in her room for too long, and it was a prized possession to her, and since they were going to start moving everything out of her room for space, they wanted me to take the piano and keep it somewhere safe, and keep it intact. I agreed and set it with all the other stuff in the U-Haul truck, not thinking much of it. When I brought it into my house yesterday morning, at first I wasn't sure where I'd put it, until I figured that I'd set it in one of the guest rooms in the house. I heaved the big piano up the stairs and into the room, setting it in the far right corner. I wiped my hands after setting it down, starting to reminisce about the memories I had with Casey. I began walking out of the room when I heard my phone ring in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw that my dad was calling. I picked up instantly. "Hey Dad, what's up?" I say into the phone. I started walking down the stairs. "Hi buddy, you moving in now?" I hear my dad's voice on the other end. I clear my throat. "Yup, just brought in Casey's piano. I set it in the guest room, so it's in good hands now." I walk outside, going towards the U-Haul. "Good, we didn't want to give it away, or have to throw it out, and we knew we could trust you with it." I hear my dad sigh on the other end for a second. "She was just going into adulthood with you." I know. I stay silent as I grab another box from the truck. I know how much it meant to you when you realized you were also going to have a girl with me. "Well, at least I still have you." I hear my dad sniffle. "I'll leave you to it now, alright?" "Alright, I'll talk to you later." Click. He had hung up before I could finish my sentence. I sigh. I needed to teach my dad to not hang up the phone when someone was still talking to him. He had a habit of doing that. I unpacked the next box as I started unloading everything out of it. The rest of the day went without notice. I continued unloading boxes out of the truck, continuing to set the house up. Picked up both lunch and dinner at KFC, and once it hit 8, I decided that I was tired and that I was going to go to sleep early, so I could have some energy for another long day of unloading boxes tomorrow. I didn't quite have my bed set up yet, so I went out and bought an air mattress to sleep on that night. I hadn't actually slept on one before, surprisingly. It took me a while, but I was finally able to blow it up and get enough air in it to lay on. I was even more tired by the time I did. At first, I didn't find it too comfortable. and it took me a while to fall asleep, maybe a good 30 minutes or so. Just listening to the noises of crickets and dogs barking from outside. You could imagine it didn't make me too happy when I woke up a few hours later at 12 a.m. I woke up to nothing but pitch darkness. I quickly adjusted to my surroundings and groaned when I checked the time. I only got 4 hours of sleep so far, and who knows how long it would take me to fall back asleep on this rough, rugged air mattress. I started hearing something coming from the guest room. At first, unsure what it was as I was still tired. I eventually figured out what it was and what had woken me up. I heard a piano playing from the guest room. For a while, I was still, too scared to move. The only explanation was that somebody had broken into my house. I didn't understand why anyone would break in and start playing my sister's old piano. But at the same time, I didn't want to find out. The piano was still playing, still hearing the notes being pressed and the melody flowing through it. I didn't recognize the tune, but it sounded sinister, almost menacious. I was shaking and still terrified as I slowly sat up from my air mattress and pulled the blanket off me. If someone was in my house, I had to go into the guest room and confront them. I ultimately stood up to my feet and took slow, controlled steps towards my bedroom door. The piano suddenly switched tempo as I put my hand on the doorknob and slowly pulled it open, stepping into the unlit hallway. From where I was standing, I couldn't see into the guest room, but I could still hear the piano notes clicking and encompassing the room. By then, I started questioning if what I was hearing was real, if this was really happening, if someone really was in my house. But as I started waking up more and became more aware, the piano was still blaring. The tune that kept continuously playing started becoming more familiar to me, however, but I still couldn't put my finger on it. I walked into the guest room and started to take a turn into it, as the piano notes started sounding more loud and drastic, and more desperate, like something was calling out to me in song. When I walked into the guest room though, the piano playing had stopped. With no one in the room, it was empty. I took a long look at the piano and saw it wasn't even plugged into the wall, along with the fact that it wasn't even turned on. I rubbed my eyes, confused but still feeling a sense of uneasiness in the room. I must have been hearing things, as there was no way anyone could play the piano, as it wasn't on. And there was nobody in here. Still though, it all felt so real, and in a way, I still believed that it was. I slowly walked over to the piano and took my finger, pressing it down onto a key. No sound came out of it, just silence. Frightened and disoriented, I walked back into my room, collapsing back onto my air mattress and fell asleep quickly. At least an hour into my sleep, I had a dream about Casey. I dreamt about when we were kids playing in the backyard. I dreamt about her starting to play the piano, and how she slowly became a natural at it. I dreamt about the news that she had gotten a job at a film studio to be a music composer for their movies. I dreamt about the truck that killed her in that accident. In the same dream, I started feeling myself fall into a void where no sounds other than the piano tune I had woken up to just earlier was playing, ringing in my ear. A void where I was attempting to try and see my sister again, but I couldn't find her. A void where I thought about my parents, about how excited my mom was to have 2 kids of her own, and how she would raise them, how happy my dad was to have a baby boy, but especially a baby girl. A void where the piano tune kept ringing and ringing as I woke up in a sweat on my air mattress. Breathing heavily, immediately awake and aware. It had to be at least 4 a.m., so it was still vastly dark inside the house. I realized shortly that the same piano tune that I had heard earlier in the night and in my dream wasn't just in my dream, and I was hearing it again from the guest room. In an instant, I sat up and just listened. It was the same exact melody, the same tempo, the same song. I still didn't know what the song was, even as it continued to sound more familiar to me. I knew for sure I wasn't hearing things this time around, as I clearly heard it, and I didn't feel as tired. As I got up to investigate, my heart beat quickly. It started registering that the tune I kept hearing tonight was a song that Casey had written once she had mastered the piano. This struck fear into me instantly. As I opened my door again and once again stepped into my empty, dark hallway, my breathing was getting more heavy as the memories of Casey performing this song to us started coming back to me. She had written it for a horror movie, I remembered. How could this be happening? Nobody knew how to play this song besides her. She hadn't premiered it to anyone else yet. I nervously stepped towards the guest room door, the door wide open, the piano melody starting to slow down as I stepped foot into the room, but not entirely going away. When I got into the room, my eyes widened as I saw who was sitting in the piano seat. It was Casey. She was looking at me now, her hands off the keys, smiling. She didn't look normal though. She looked slightly decomposed. Her pale skin was almost muddy, her hair tangled in a mess, and one side of her face looked fractured. It also looked like there was a ton of dry blood on her dry skin. I knew she was in a brutal car crash, but not like this. And even then, I thought she was dead. How was she sitting in front of me now? I didn't know what to say. I was horrified at seeing her again. And while I wanted to be happy, I devastatingly still didn't understand. I wanted to let more words out, but all I could say was a weak, "Casey?" I watched as Casey, who seemed like a more zombified version of herself, slowly gets up from the seat and she breathes out, "It's been a while, hasn't it?" I take a tiny step forward as tears start to form in my eyes. I was in utmost disbelief. Aren't you supposed to be dead?" "I am dead. I just see that you're keeping my old piano and I miss you, brother. I needed to bring myself out to see you again." Casey breathes out. A little smile cracks on my face, but the fear still remained as I still didn't know how my dead sister was standing in front of me right now. I wanted to hug her, but I was too stiff to even be able to move. My legs were frozen in place. I noticed something in the far corner of the room next to me, putting me off guard for a moment. I turned my head to my side and saw my dad standing next to me, with no movement in his body. He looked different though. He had blood leaking from the side of his head. His skin was pale and muddy, and he also looked slightly decomposed. I took a terrified step back as he looked at me, a look of disapproval on his face as I do so. I looked back at Casey, pointing at my dad, my lips quivering. Why is Dad here? Why does he look so weird? You didn't know? Casey takes another step towards me, as her smile starts to fade into a look of confusion. My heart sinks as she proceeds to say, "Dad killed himself a day after I died."